Good morning, children. First of all, listen very carefully what I am going to tell you. Yesterday, I had sent one PDF of subjective sample paper in which I had given two unseen passage, two message writing, and some questions. These all for your practice only. The same questions will not come in your exams. Listen again. These all for your practice only. The same questions will not come in your exams. Especially unseen passage and message writing will be from outside. Okay? Unseen passage, it must be unseen that you haven't seen. And message format you have to learn. How to write message you have to learn. Means you will get one new conversation and you have to find the information from it. And you have to learn the format and write the information in it. Okay? So now for your revision, today I am going to read lesson 2.1 and 2.2 and then 2.3. So what you have to do is you have to listen each word very carefully. Okay? So let's start 2.1. The girl on the train. I was traveling by train to Dehradun. It was a first class compartment, and up to Rampur, I was alone in it. Then a girl got on. The couple seeing her off were probably her parents. They seemed very anxious about her comfort and safety. The woman gave the girl detailed instructions as to how she should bear herself during the journey. She told her where to keep her things so that they were not lost. She bade her not to lean out of the window. Particularly, she asked her to avoid speaking to strangers. As I was blind, I could not tell what the girl looked like, but I knew she wore slippers from the way they slapped against her heels. She laughed as she talked, and I liked the sound of her voice. Are you going to Dehradun? I asked her as the train pulled out of the station. I must have been sitting in a dark corner because my voice startled her. She gave a little exclamation and said, I didn't know anyone else was here in the compartment. I too didn't see you at first, I said, but I heard you come in. I wondered if I could be able to prevent the girl from discovering that I was blind. I thought to myself, if I keep to my seat, she won't perhaps know of it. I'm getting down at Saharanpur, the girl said. My aunt shall come to receive me at the station. Where are you going? To Dehradun and then to Mussoorie, I replied. Oh, lucky you, exclaimed the girl. I wish I too were going to Mussoorie. I love the mountains, especially in October. Yes, this is the best time, I said, recalling my memories when I could see. The hills are covered with beautiful wildflowers. It is pleasant during the day and the sun is delicious. At night, you can sit in front of a log fire and drink a little brandy. She didn't say anything in reply. For quite a while, there was silence. I wondered if my words had offended her. Perhaps she was thinking of me as a romantic fool. Here, part 1 is finished. Now, second part. Then I made a mistake. What is it like outside? I asked. This question did not surprise her. Had she noticed that I couldn't see? But I felt reassured when she asked quite naturally, why don't you look out of the window? I moved easily along the berth and felt for the window ledge. The window was open and I faced it. I made pretense of studying the landscape. In my mind's eyes, I could see the telegraph post flashing by. Have you noticed, I said with confidence, that the tree seems to be moving while we seems to be still? That always happens, she said. I turned from the window and faced the girl. For a while, we sat in silence. You have an interesting face, I commented. I was becoming quite daring, but it was a safe remark. Few girls would mind anything said in their praise. She laughed pleasantly. It was a clear, ringing laugh. It's nice to be told that, she said. I'm so tired of people telling me that I have a pretty face. So you do have a pretty face, I said to myself. And then I said aloud, well, an interesting face can be a pretty face also. You are very witty, she said. Have your watch? What time is it? We will be soon at your station, I replied. Thank goodness. It's a short journey, she said. I can't bear to sit in a train for more than 2 or 3 hours. But I was prepared to sit there with her for any length of time. I could never be tired of listening to her talking. Her voice had the sparkle of a mountain brook. As soon as she left the train, she would forget our brief encounter, but its sweetness would stay with me for the rest of the journey. All my pleasant thoughts were centered round her. The engine gave a whistle, the carriage wheels changed their sound and rhythm. The girl got up to collect her things. I wondered if she wore her hair in a bun or if she had a ponytail. I wondered if it hung down loose over her shoulders or if it was cut very short. The train drew slowly into the station. Outside there was the shouting of porters and vendors. A high pitched female voice was heard near the carriage door. It must have been the girl's aunt there. Goodbye, said the girl. She was standing very close to me. She was so close that I could smell the perfume from her hair. I stood up from my seat. I wanted to raise my hand and touch her hair, but she moved away. Only the perfume still lingered where she had stood. There was some confusion in the doorway. A man who was getting into the compartment spoke some word in apology. Then the door banged shut and I turned to my berth. The guard blew his whistle and the train moved off. Slowly, the train gathered speed. The wheels took up their song. The carriage groaned and shook. I found the window and sat in front of it. I started staring into the daylight that was darkness for me. Once again, I had a game to play and a new companion. I'm sorry, said the passenger, trying to make conversation. I'm not as attractive a companion as the one who just left. She was an interesting girl, I said. Can you tell me whether she had long hair or short? I didn't notice, he replied, sounding puzzled. It was her eyes I noticed, not her hair. She had such beautiful eyes, but they were of no use to her. She was completely blind. Didn't you notice? Here, lesson 2.1 reading is finished. Now I have to read lesson 2.2 working families. It is a very long time since the days when mothers stayed at home and devoted all their time to housework and raising children. Nowadays, both partners in many households have to balance their commitments to their jobs, children's, and the household chores. How do they do it? A family magazine has interviewed 5 readers about their work, their home, and family commitments. Read below what they have to say. Chitra Singh, 31 years. Both husband and I have been working at the same factory since before we got married. This isn't a particularly secure situation because we would both lose our jobs if the factory closed. However, there is no other work available and our wages aren't bad. Both our boys go to school now, so there isn't any big problem. When my parents were still alive, they looked after them. Now the boys reach back home from school before I or my husband get back from the factory. I do feel a little guilty about not being able to serve them something hot and refreshing on their return. Fortunately, neither the factory nor the school is far from our house, and in case of any emergency, we can be with each other in no time. I am not a very modern woman. I do particularly all the housework and cooking. However, Jagjit likes to take responsibility for the shopping and does all the ironing also. Thus, we can have more time together as a family. My work as an accountant here, Bharti Nagpal, 26 year. My work as an accountant at a bank often keeps me busy for longer than the normal 9 to 5 office hour. On the other hand, Yogesh is a teacher, so he can get home earlier and prepare the evening meal while at the same time entertain our little daughter Archana. My mother, who lives in the next block, collects Archana from nursery school and looks after her for a couple of hours until Yogesh can take her home. Neither of us is very keen on housework, so we tend to do the bare minimum. Anyway, now that I have a good job with a high salary, I have started paying a woman to do most of the housework. She comes 3 days a week. Mamta Sinha, 36 years. Both of our daughters are teenagers now and are a great help looking after grandpa. I work long hours at the hospital where I am a nurse and feel exhausted when I get home. Neeraj is very old fashioned and will never lift a finger to help around the house. He says he does enough driving his bus all day. Fortunately, young Keshav isn't at all like his father and will compete with her elder sisters to see who helps me the most. Vinita Goyal, 47 years. The twins, Astha and Anuj, are in their last year at school and aren't concerned about being looked after so long as I keep their clothes ready to wear. However, I still have to work hard to balance my duties as a doctor, a housewife, and a mother. Rajesh has his own company, but these days he has the freedom to stay at home when he wants, as he no longer has to work such long hours as he used to. He is actually quite willing to help around the house, but he is totally hopeless at it. So I encourage him to stay out and work in the garden as much as possible. Tulsi Rawat, 29 years. My work as a company manager keeps me busy for very long hours and I frequently have to go away on business trips. I love my work and for that reason Gagan decided to stay at home after Anu was born last year. He is very good at looking after the baby and loves the home environment. As he is a copywriter, he can also do some of his work on our home computer. He emails this to his clients. He's also quite adept at doing the housework, which he does without complaint, though occasionally I like to help him to show that I'm still part of the family. Here, lesson 2.2 is finished. Now, lesson 2.3, flats and flats. Okay, Nancy Smith wants to rent a flat. She has looked at 4 so far, but has found none so perfect as to suit her needs and taste. Read what she has to say about each of these flats. The first flat. The first flat I looked at is about 6 kilometers from the town center. It has 3 huge bedrooms, but the kitchen is very small. I think the kitchen must have been designed by someone who usually eats out and hasn't to cook much at home. In contrast, the bathroom is the sort of place a millionaire would feel at home in. It's got a deep sunken bath, marble walls, full length mirrors, and even a music system. The living room is a bit strange. It's long and narrow with stained glass windows in one wall. There is a single tiny window in the outer wall that overlooks the road. But I think that doesn't matter since there's nothing to look anyway except the factory across the road. The flat is on the third floor and there is a newly installed, very efficient lift and an impressive security system with closed circuit cameras. The building was very quiet when I was there, but I don't know what it's like in the evening. The second flat. The second flat is 2 minutes walk from the town center, which is really convenient for shopping and so on. The flat is centrally air cooled. It's got a marvelous fireplace in the kitchen, but which is not really necessary. However, it would be great sitting in front of it in the cold winter. In the cold winter evenings, watching the flames. The kitchen is nearly as big as those you find in restaurants, but both the bedrooms are tiny. There is just enough room for the basic bedroom furniture and nothing else. Another negative aspect of the flat is that the people next door obviously enjoy playing loud music. They were also yelling at one another when I was there. I could hear them quite clearly arguing with each other. On the positive side, there is an enormous balcony half covered in a grapevine. When you sit out there, you can see right over the city and watch children playing in the park below. It's fantastic. Third, the third flat. The third flat is on the ground floor. The best thing about it that it has access to a lovely garden. The living room door opens straight onto the lawn. I didn't see anything else that appealed to me though. The previous tenant had painted the ceiling black and the walls red. The carpet was bright yellow. In the kitchen, there's a room for only 2 people at a time. No way, no way you could fit in a table and have your meals in there. The bathroom is very small and dark. The bedroom is to the side of the street and would be very noisy. With no central cooling system, the flat would be burning hot in summer. It's also quite a long way from the shops and the bus service appears to be unreliable. The young man living upstairs looked rather unfriendly. Hardly the sort of neighbors I would enjoy living with. Fourth, the fourth flat. The fourth flat gives me mixed feeling. On the positive side, it's airy and has a lot of natural light during the day. The rooms, including the kitchen and the bathroom, are all big and bright. There is in them plenty of space to move around. The color scheme is also good. Light natural colors like white, cream, and pale gray, all freshly painted. But the owner wants to leave all his furniture in the flat, which means I had have to sell my own couch, chairs, and everything. Another problem is that there is no lift and the flat is on the fifth floor. It would be good exercise going up and down the stairs every day. I would love this exercise, but not if I had to. However, being up so high would mean you could look out over the countryside. Watching the sunset from the little balcony would almost make the climb up the stairs worthwhile. Here, this chapter 2.3 reading is finished. Now I'm going to end this video. Thank you.